In my first year on News at 10, I reported on a highly unusual case that has stayed with me to this day.
ITN News at 10 with Trevor McDonald.
It began with several unexplained collapses on a children's ward in a small Lincolnshire hospital.
Staff at the Grantham and Kestervan General Hospital became concerned about the growing number of youngsters suffering cardiac and respiratory arrests.
For the first time in British history, a nurse was convicted of killing children in a hospital. Guilty of murdering 4 children. Guilty of 3 attempted murders. Guilty 6 times of causing grievous bodily harm with intent. 25 years on from her conviction, I'm still curious about the impact Beverley Allitt had on her surviving victims and how she was finally brought to justice. I've come to Grantham to meet the children who survived her attacks, and the detective without whom she may never have been caught. Former Superintendent Stuart Clifton remembers the case from the beginning, as if it were yesterday.
On the 30th of April of 1991, a detective sergeant at Grantham rang me to say that there had been an abnormal number of child deaths and collapses. I went to the hospital myself the next day. I met with the 2 hospital paediatricians and we talked through the collapses of a number of children that had occurred on the children's ward, Ward 4.
In 59 days, there had been 4 deaths and more than 20 collapses on the ward. One senior doctor suspected foul play, but the other felt there was no real cause for suspicion.
Dr. Nanyakara felt that the collapses of children on that ward were just a blip on a graph and that there would be medical explanations.
I said, from my point of view, I don't have any suspicions. Yes, I know I'm very worried. I genuinely didn't have any suspicion.
An independent medical report confirmed some suspicions, but concluded that most of the children's collapses could be explained medically.
I looked at the report and had the feeling that it was basically shutting down the inquiry.
Detective Clifton faced resistance. Colleagues told him he would never get a conviction.
One very senior officer said to me, "You're chasing rainbows." Detectives develop a sixth sense, I think, and particularly experienced detectives, and there was something that just rankled with me that didn't seem quite true.
Stuart Clifton refused to give up his investigation. He suspected a killer was still on the ward. The children who had suffered played on his mind. Before the nightmares began, 22-year-old Beverley Allitt was a well-liked nurse on a close-knit children's ward.
We had a small unit with small team, so we knew each other. She was young, pleasant, very quiet, and I thought she was helpful.
Families of the patients adored her. During a chaotic 2 months, when their children were collapsing at an alarming rate, Nurse Beverley was always there to help. One couple unwittingly made her a godmother to a child she attacked. But Detective Clifton was convinced something sinister was happening on the ward. He feared there could be other attacks at any moment. So despite the tension it would cause, he pursued his investigation. Did it ever occur to you that you might be wrong?
It did, and it also occurred to me that if I was wrong, that there would be consequences, and I probably wouldn't be doing the job any longer.
But if Stuart Clifton's suspicions were correct, there was a murderer working on the ward who could strike again. The police were now certain that there was a criminal at large on Ward 4. And they worked out that there was one nurse present at all of the attacks.
I decided that I would have Beverley Allitt arrested. In my naivety, I suppose, I thought that a young girl that's never been in trouble with the police before might just tell us what she's done. I couldn't have been more wrong.
No matter what you say, I'm sticking to my story. I did not do it. And that is the whole bloody truth. And it'll always be the truth.
Beverley Allitt's arrest was only the beginning. With no hard evidence, police needed a confession to prevent a killer from going back on the children's ward. In the spring of 1991, Nurse Beverley Allitt was arrested after a series of mysterious deaths and collapses at Grantham Hospital. Stuart, tell me about the first time you brought in Beverley Allitt for an interview.
Being an old-fashioned copper, I thought, 20-odd-year-old girl, never been in trouble with the police before, perhaps she'll tell us what it is that she's done. I couldn't have been more wrong.
I've come to meet the team Detective Clifton assembled to arrest and question Beverley Allitt. So you arrest a young nurse for murder. What did she say?
She was quite calm, quite confident for somebody who's just been arrested for murder.
It was unusual. If I had been arrested for attempted murder of a child, then I think myself and most people would have a different reaction. She was really laid back, chatty. You know, it was almost as if, come on, Bev, we're going to take you into town for a cup of coffee, really, rather than, you know, you've just been arrested on the attempted murder of some child.
As Beverley Allitt was taken in to be interviewed, Detective Michelle Billingsley sat next to her in the police van.
We took her into Grantham Police Station. We'd obviously got the press and that round there, taking these photographs. She looks as if she's enjoying it, doesn't she? I mean, she has got a smile on her face, and she's peering out. I don't. I'm looking quite perplexed about it all, I think, but she certainly looks more relaxed than what I look. She doesn't look worried at all, does she?
Without sufficient forensic evidence, there was pressure on detectives to get Allitt to talk.
This interview is being recorded. I am Policewoman 489 Billingsley, stationed at Grantham. My colleague is...
NEONATAL, Detective Inspector.
What's your full name, please?
Beverley Allitt.
It's the first time in my career that I had interviewed anybody that was under such suspicion. So I suppose there's a certain amount of anxiety that you get the interview right at the time. We'll have to tell you both that you don't have to say anything unless you wish to do so, but what you say may be given evidence. I do understand all that.
The police knew that at least one victim, baby Paul Crampton, had been poisoned with insulin. They suspected Allitt was responsible, but lacked evidence tying her to the crime. They needed her to confess.
You were arrested this morning on suspicion of the attempt murder of Paul Crampton, who was a baby on the ward from about the 20th of March.
Those involved with the case have not heard these tapes for more than 25 years.
Do you remember that child being on the ward?
Yes, I do.
The officers began by asking Beverley Allitt about Paul Crampton.
We have got this kid in for Paul Crampton. Some harm has been done to it, and you are the prime suspect at the moment. Everything points at you.
I know everything points at me, but what can I do to say I didn't? I've told you I didn't do it, and I wouldn't dream of doing it to anybody. God, why a patient if I hated somebody that much?
It soon became apparent that she wasn't going to admit to anything.
Officers tried to pin Allitt down on her precise movements around Paul's collapse.
And you say you went in there. Also in there was...
Dad, Mr. Crampton and Paul.
Paul's father, David, has never heard this interview before, and as Allitt did not give evidence in court, he's keen to hear her version of events.
Did you give that child anything?
Not a thing. I don't think I even went in the room. I'm really going to sneak back on the ward and say, oh, here, I'll have a bit of this.
I was always sure that she had a clear plan. These tapes bring that into real crystal clarity. Clear thinking, clear thought, clear plan, know where I want to get to.
No matter how much you don't believe me, and I know you don't, I don't care. I can't bloody lie to you. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you for days on end while I get questioned.
There was a certain confident attitude about her. I think she thought, which she did, that she knew more than we did, which put her in that better position, which she obviously enjoyed.
I'll tell you what, when I found out who bloody did it, I was having me and you all spacing time. Fed up.
With no decisive evidence, Allitt's interviewers knew they could not hold her for long. And time was running out.
You haven't got evidence to say I injected him. What am I doing? Going round flipping doing something to him?
Probably.
Oh, what? You tell me what I could do. I am not bloody lying. I wouldn't do it.
Unless they made a breakthrough, police might have to release a suspected killer back to work on a children's ward.
But what am I
And
doing?
it's you, Beth.
You tell me what I'm
I don't
doing to
know.
the children.
All I can say is
I
that
don't
Paul
know.
Crampton suffered that
Insulin.
because of
I know.
insulin. So we have to look at who's had the access to insulin.
No matter what you say, I'm sticking to my story. I did not do it.
The 22-year-old nurse would not break. In fact, she grew more defiant.
Is there anything you just want to clarify?
Yeah, I'll be here all year. Keep me. Oh
Is there
yeah.
anything you want to say?
Ask me next year.
We'll clear another time.
So, what did you think hearing those words again?
It brings it all back, actually. And you heard her. You know, she sounded confident. She replied to us straight away. There was no hesitation. She knew exactly what she was doing.
But she was absolutely defiant in saying that she was not involved.
It just hammers home to me how devious she was.